Your soulmate broke down crying in a voice message. Please listen before I leave. My beloved child, listen carefully, don't skip this message, because there is a voice you may not have heard yet, but the emotion behind it is already louder than words. Somewhere, someone has been holding back a confession for longer than you realize, and tonight, the silence is becoming too heavy for them to carry. Your soulmate may have recorded a voice message, deleted it, recorded another, stopped halfway through, wiped away their tears, and tried again. They wanted to sound strong, but their voice betrayed them. And the sentence they have been afraid to say is painfully simple: please listen before I leave. Stay until the end, because this is not simply about someone missing you. This is about someone finally reaching the point where pretending they are okay has become impossible. Imagine the moment. It is late. The room is quiet. Their phone is in their hand, but they have been staring at your name for several minutes without pressing send. They have typed words and erased them. They have opened your conversation and closed it again. They know there are things they need to say, but every possible sentence sounds too small for what they are feeling. Finally, they press record. At first, there is silence. Then you hear a breath. A shaky breath. The kind of breath someone takes when they are trying desperately not to cry. And then they begin. Please, just listen to this before you decide anything. Their voice cracks. They pause. They almost stop recording. But they continue. Because there are moments when the heart becomes tired of hiding. Your soulmate may have spent a long time pretending they did not care as much as they actually do. They may have acted distant because vulnerability frightened them. They may have told themselves that silence was safer than rejection. They may have convinced themselves that you had already moved on. But beneath that calm exterior, there has been a completely different conversation happening inside them. They have been asking themselves whether they waited too long. Whether they hurt you beyond repair. Whether you still think about them. Whether you would answer if they called. Whether you would believe them if they finally told you the truth. And perhaps the most painful question has been this: what if I lose them because I was too afraid to speak? That question has been following them everywhere. They may have gone through their day normally. They may have smiled at people. They may have worked, talked, laughed, and acted as though nothing was wrong. But then something reminded them of you. A song. A place. A familiar phrase. A photograph. A message they never deleted. And suddenly, everything they had been holding back came rushing to the surface. That is when the voice message happened. Not because they planned some dramatic confession. Not because they wanted attention. But because they reached an emotional breaking point. They realized that another day of silence might become another day they regret. And your soulmate may be carrying a confession that begins with an apology. I'm sorry. Two simple words. But behind them are hundreds of moments they wish they could rewrite. I'm sorry I disappeared. I'm sorry I acted like I didn't care. I'm sorry I made you question yourself. I'm sorry I pushed you away when I actually wanted you closer. I'm sorry I made you feel like you were asking for too much. And maybe they stop again because the tears become stronger. This is the part they never wanted you to hear. Not because they are ashamed of loving you. Because they are ashamed of how fear made them behave. Your soulmate may finally understand that distance did not protect them. It only created more pain. They thought if they walked away first, they could avoid being hurt. They thought if they acted indifferent, they could stay in control. They thought if they stopped talking, their feelings would eventually disappear. But feelings do not always disappear because you stop speaking about them. Sometimes silence makes them louder. And that may be exactly what happened. The more they tried not to think about you, the more memories appeared. They remembered the way you looked at them. They remembered the sound of your voice. They remembered conversations you probably thought they had forgotten. They remembered small details you never realized they noticed. And suddenly, your soulmate understood something terrifying. They never truly moved on. They only became better at hiding it. That is why the voice message matters. Because speaking is different from thinking. When someone says something aloud, they can no longer pretend the feeling does not exist. Maybe your soulmate whispered, "I miss you." Then there was silence. Maybe they tried to continue. "I miss you more than I know how to explain." Another pause. "I thought I could live with this distance." A shaky breath. "I was wrong." That sentence may have been the hardest one. Because admitting you were wrong requires humility. It means accepting that your decisions had consequences. It means looking at the past without excuses. And your soulmate may finally be doing that. They may be remembering the exact moment they chose silence instead of honesty. The exact moment they walked away instead of explaining. The exact moment they let pride speak for them. And now they wish they could return to that moment. But they cannot. All they can do is speak now. That is why they are asking you to listen before they leave. Not necessarily because they are disappearing forever. Sometimes, "before I leave" means before they leave a place, before they begin a new chapter, before they close an old door, before circumstances change, or before they finally stop waiting for an answer. The important part is the urgency. They do not want to leave without telling you what has been sitting inside their heart. They may say, "I don't know if you still want to hear from me." And then they may admit something that surprises you. "I was afraid you would laugh. I was afraid you would ignore me. I was afraid you would say it was too late." But the truth is, your soulmate is not necessarily asking you to fix everything tonight. They are asking you to hear them. That distinction matters. Because sometimes the first step toward healing is not reunion. It is honesty. A person finally saying what they should have said months ago. A person finally admitting what their silence was hiding. A person finally taking responsibility for their part in the story. And perhaps that is what your soulmate is doing. They may tell you about the nights they couldn't sleep. They may admit they checked your profile and then pretended they didn't. They may confess that they wrote messages they never sent. They may say they wanted to call you many times but stopped themselves. They may reveal that they asked mutual friends about you without wanting you to know. They may even admit that they tried to convince themselves you were not important. But every attempt failed. Because some connections do not disappear simply because you refuse to name them. And maybe your soulmate is finally naming it. I still care about you. I still think about you. I still wonder what would have happened if I had been honest. I still wish I could go back. The voice may become quieter here. Because this is the vulnerable part. They may tell you that they were afraid of how much you mattered. Not because you did anything wrong. But because caring deeply means giving someone the ability to hurt you. And your soulmate may have been protecting themselves from that possibility. They may have believed that love meant weakness. They may have grown up learning to hide emotions. They may have experienced a relationship that taught them not to trust. They may have been hurt before you ever entered their life. So when they felt something real with you, instead of moving closer, they panicked. They pulled away. They became cold. They became confusing. They gave you mixed signals. And now they are realizing that their fear protected them from one kind of pain while creating another. They protected themselves from vulnerability. But they lost closeness with you. And that loss hurt more. Maybe the voice message continues. I don't know if I deserve another chance. That sentence carries enormous weight. Because it means they are no longer demanding. They are no longer assuming you will forgive everything. They are recognizing that forgiveness is something you choose. They may say, I know I can't ask you to forget what happened. I know I can't expect you to trust me immediately. I know saying sorry doesn't erase everything. And then they may say the one thing you never expected. But I needed you to know that you were never the problem. Your soulmate may finally understand that. You were not too emotional. You were not too demanding. You were not too difficult to love. You were not asking for too much. You were simply asking for clarity from someone who was confused. And perhaps your soulmate's confusion made you question your own worth. But now they want to correct that. They want you to know that their distance was about their fear, not your value. Their silence was about their inability to communicate, not your lack of importance. Their hesitation was about their internal struggle, not your inability to be loved. And that realization can be healing. Maybe they say, you deserved better than the way I treated you. Then they cry. Not because they want pity. Because they finally understand the cost of their choices. This is where the message becomes deeper. Your soulmate may have discovered that losing access to you forced them to meet themselves. When you were around, they could distract themselves. They could postpone difficult questions. They could tell themselves there would always be another conversation. But when you became quiet, they had nowhere to hide. Your absence became a mirror. And in that mirror, they saw the person they had become. They saw fear, pride, avoidance, regret. And beneath all of it, love. That realization changed them. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But enough to make them want to speak. Maybe they tell you, I don't want to keep pretending. That could be the most important sentence in the entire message. Because pretending is exhausting. Pretending not to care is exhausting. Pretending to be happy without someone is exhausting. Pretending the past doesn't matter is exhausting. Pretending you don't regret your decisions is exhausting. Eventually, the heart gets tired. And when the heart gets tired of pretending, the truth comes out. Your soulmate's truth may be coming out now. They may tell you they have been scared of what happens if you reject them. But they are even more scared of never telling you. That is why they pressed record. Because they would rather risk hearing no than spend another year wondering what would have happened if they had been brave. And maybe this is where you need to listen carefully too. A confession is not automatically a commitment. Tears are not automatically transformation. Missing someone is not automatically readiness. The real question is what happens after the emotional moment. If your soulmate truly means what they say, their actions will eventually become consistent with their words. They will communicate. They will show accountability. They will respect your boundaries. They will stop creating confusion. They will not expect you to repair everything they broke. They will understand that rebuilding trust takes time. And if they are sincere, they will be willing to do that work. Because love is not just a feeling. Love is behavior. Love is consistency. Love is responsibility. Love is choosing someone even when fear tells you to run. Your soulmate may finally be learning that. Perhaps the voice message ends with another long silence. You can almost hear them trying to compose themselves. Then they say, "I don't know what happens after you hear this. I don't know whether you'll answer. I don't know whether I've already lost my chance. But I couldn't leave without telling you." And then, perhaps, the final words. "Please take care of yourself. I love you. I always did. I just didn't know how to show you." And the recording stops. Silence. No dramatic music. No perfect ending. Just silence. And that silence may be the most powerful part. Because now the decision is not theirs alone. They have finally spoken. Now you get to choose what you do with what you heard. You don't have to rush. You don't have to answer immediately. You don't have to forgive instantly. You don't have to return simply because someone cried. Your heart deserves time. Your healing deserves respect. And if your soulmate truly loves you, they will understand that. They will not pressure you. They will not manipulate your emotions. They will not use their tears to force a decision. They will allow their actions to speak after the voice message ends. That is how you will know whether this was simply an emotional moment or the beginning of genuine change. So, beloved child, if you have been waiting for an explanation, perhaps the explanation is finally coming. Maybe not exactly as you imagined. Maybe not at the time you expected. But sometimes people speak only after they realize silence has become more painful than honesty. And your soulmate may be reaching that moment. The person who once seemed emotionally unavailable may finally be admitting how much they cared. The person who once walked away may finally understand what they left behind. The person who once acted strong may finally allow themselves to cry. And perhaps the person who said, "I don't need anyone," is finally admitting, "I needed you." But remember your worth. You are not responsible for saving them from their regret. You are not responsible for carrying their emotional burden. You are not responsible for making their healing easier. You can listen without losing yourself. You can care without chasing. You can forgive without forgetting. You can love someone and still require them to treat you properly. That is strength. That is maturity. That is real love. And perhaps the most beautiful ending is not necessarily that they come running back. The most beautiful ending is that both of you finally become honest. If the connection is meant to continue, honesty will create a healthier beginning. If it is not, honesty will finally give you peace. Either way, truth frees you. So if your soulmate's voice message ever arrives, don't listen only for the words you have been hoping to hear. Listen for responsibility. Listen for sincerity. Listen for whether they understand what happened. Listen for whether they are ready to change. And then watch what they do after the message. Because the real story begins after the recording stops. Maybe they will call again. Maybe they will wait. Maybe they will give you space. Maybe they will finally show up differently. Whatever happens, remember that you do not have to abandon yourself to receive love. You never did. And perhaps that is the lesson hidden inside their tears. They were not crying because you were impossible to love. They were crying because they finally realized how much fear had cost them. They were crying because the person they pushed away was the person they never truly wanted to lose. They were crying because they finally understood that time does not wait forever. And they were crying because they finally found the courage to say what their heart had been whispering for so long. Please listen before I leave. So listen, but listen with wisdom. Listen with compassion. Listen with boundaries. And most importantly, listen to yourself. What does your heart need? What does your future require? What kind of love are you willing to accept? Those answers matter just as much as your soulmate's confession. Because your story is not only about whether they return. It is about whether the love that returns is healthier than the love that left. And if they truly mean every word, they will not ask you to forget the past. They will help you build something better from it. They will understand that trust is earned slowly. They will understand that one voice message cannot repair everything. They will understand that your heart is not a door they can open and close whenever they feel afraid. They will show you through patience, through consistency, through honesty, through presence. And perhaps one day, you will hear their voice again. But this time, there will be no trembling, no fear, no desperate goodbye. Instead, there will be peace. And they may say something completely different. I stayed. I chose honesty. I stopped running. I finally understood. I am here. That would be the real transformation. Not the tears. Not the confession. Not the dramatic moment. The transformation would be the person who once ran from love finally learning how to stay. So don't be afraid of the message. Don't be afraid of what it might reveal. Don't be afraid of the emotions it may awaken. Let truth come into the light. And if your soulmate truly has something to say, let them say it. Then let their actions tell you what the words mean. Because you deserve more than a beautiful confession. You deserve a beautiful consistency. You deserve someone who doesn't only cry because they are losing you. You deserve someone who chooses you while they still have the chance to love you openly. And perhaps that is the final lesson this voice message carries. Don't wait for someone to break down before they realize your worth. Don't wait for someone to almost lose you before they decide to appreciate you. Your worth existed before their realization. Your value existed before their regret. Your heart mattered before their tears. And if they truly understand that now, let them prove it. Let them come forward with courage. Let them speak with honesty. Let them show up with consistency. And if they do, perhaps this is not the end of the story. Perhaps it is the first honest chapter. Because sometimes the most important message is the one someone almost never sends. The message recorded in trembling silence. The message that begins with a shaky breath. The message that says, "I don't know if you still care." The message that finally admits, "I was scared." The message that confesses, "I never stopped thinking about you." And finally, the message that whispers through tears. Please listen before I leave. But now the question belongs to you. Not, will they choose me? Not, will they come back? Not, do they still love me? The deeper question is, if they return, will they be ready to love me in a way that no longer requires me to lose myself? That is the question that matters. And whatever your answer becomes, choose yourself without guilt. Because the right love will never ask you to become smaller. The right love will not punish you for having boundaries. The right love will not disappear whenever things become difficult. The right love will learn. The right love will communicate. The right love will stay. And if your soulmate is truly ready to become that person, their next chapter with you will not be built on desperation. It will be built on truth. So breathe deeply. Release the fear. Let the past rest. Let the future reveal itself. You don't have to chase the voice message. You don't have to force the conversation. You don't have to make the first move just because they are emotional. Let them show you what they mean. And if one day their trembling voice becomes steady, if their apology becomes accountability, if their regret becomes action, and if their fear finally becomes courage, then you will know that something real has changed. Until then, keep walking forward. Keep growing. Keep protecting your peace. And remember this final truth. Someone can cry because they are afraid of losing you, but real love is proven when they learn how to stop giving you reasons to leave. Maybe that is what your soulmate is finally learning. Maybe that is why they pressed record. Maybe that is why their voice broke. Maybe that is why, after all the silence, all the distance, and all the fear, they finally whispered the words they had been carrying inside. Please listen before leave. And perhaps, for the first time, they are not asking you to chase them. They are asking you to hear the truth. What happens next is not about desperation. It is about choice. Their choice to become honest. Your choice to protect your heart. And the possibility of two people finally meeting each other without masks, without games, and without fear. That is where the real story begins.